Welcome back to Share Stories with me, Gypsy Kim, and today I have a quick update for you guys if you're following the case of Gypsy Rose Blanchard. Who isn't? I did cover her case with details in my very first video upload right here on this channel, which was only 2 weeks ago. So take a look at that if you want to be all caught up, since I won't be going over the nuances of her case in this episode. I also gave you guys an initial update video where I discussed her appearance on a popular talk show called The View, and we went over some of the questions that she was asked and her responses to those questions. But today, I wanted to catch y'all up on all of the random controversies surrounding this woman, thanks to the good old internet, where we can always count on the crazies, the snowflakes, and angry villagers to come full swing with the virtual pitchforks. So, where do I even start? In no particular order, I'm going to cover the following subjects as it relates to our girl Gypsy Rose here. The unreported childhood sexual abuse by her grandfather. Working with Kim Kardashian on prison reform. Gypsy's new husband, Ryan, is a problem for some reason. She can't be in the state of Missouri. She's trying to milk her mom's murder for fame and riches. Gypsy's tendency to share TMI for no apparent reason. What happens when Gypsy gets triggered again? And a show called Prison Wives? Missouri Misery. Upon release from the prison, Gypsy was almost immediately ordered to leave the state of Missouri, along with her family, who had already rented a home nearby for her to stay at while adjusting to her release. Her father had been sending her money while she was in prison. Good God, can this man not have his flowers already? We need to celebrate more dads like this one. Anyway, she apparently was using some of the money to buy Taylor Swift's music while she was in jail, and she is a huge fan, aka Swiftie. Reportedly, her parole officer got word that she and her family needed to pack up and leave the state due to all of the media attention surrounding her release. This unfortunate situation means that Gypsy would not be able to catch the Chiefs game that was supposed to be happening the Sunday following her release, and despite having bought tickets for that game months ago, she would not be able to see Taylor Swift. It seems that her presence is considered a so-called security risk for the Kansas City area. Now, what does this have to do with Taylor Swift? According to the news outlets, Gypsy and her husband had plans to go to this game set in stone for months, and attending the Kansas City Chiefs game was supposed to be in hopes of meeting Taylor Swift, who they thought might be there to cheer on her boyfriend, Travis Kelce. Is that how you say his name? I don't follow sports, so I don't know, sorry. But can I just say, you're only going to the game to see somebody who might be there as a spectator? This is not at all stalkerish behavior, right? I mean, I got my own handful of parasocial relationships with my favorite YouTubers and celebrities. Hi, Sachi. Hi, Christina. Hello, Denzel. I love you so much. I want to marry you. You're my soulmate. Please say you love me. But going so far as to buy tickets to something that I am not that interested in the hopes of not just getting a glimpse, but actually meeting these people, I don't know. Maybe I'm not passionate or delusional enough, depending on how you want to look at it, to assume that these people would not be completely weirded out if I approached them like, yo, listen, your content, it's been keeping me from going crazy for the past 8 years that I've been locked up for murder. Can we take a selfie? Even with the autistic mind that I have, I know that this does not even sound right. But nonetheless, I do think it's kind of crazy that you could be kicked out of a state by the police. Do they actually have the authority legally to do that? I mean, I wouldn't have left. It's still a free country if you ask me, and unless they told her in writing with potential consequences named and had a signature from Gypsy Rose Blanchard agreeing to those terms, I think they might have lined themselves up for a lawsuit or something like, I'm coming for you if you try to kick me out to stay on some bullshit. She is on parole, so maybe she just got spooked and she was like, oh no, I ain't trying to take no chances. I ain't trying to go back to that place. No. Maybe that's why she just left. What would you do? Child abuse by granddad. So, in this recently aired docuseries on Lifetime called The Prison Confessions of Gypsy Rose Blanchard, Gypsy Rose opens up about something really heavy. She says that she went through a really tough time as a kid, obviously, but she also claims that her grandfather, Claude Petra, did some really awful stuff. Just to give you a bit of background, Gypsy Rose is known for being a victim of Munchausen by proxy. She just got out of prison at the end of December 2023, very, very recently, after serving 8 years for the 2015 murder of her mother, Deedee Blanchard, who was very cruel and very abusive to her. Now, in an exclusive chat with People, Gypsy Rose is standing her ground, repeating that her grandfather had molested her when she was a child, and this went on for about a year. She's basically saying, I reached a point where I can speak up about it and not let it affect me anymore. I watched the portion of the interview where the grandfather was confronted by a reporter with these allegations, and he vehemently okay, or is it vehemently, denied the accusations. He went even further to say that it was actually Gypsy at the age of 4 that would try to touch him inappropriately, and he would have to tell her no and to stop what she was doing. Now, when she was told her grandfather's response, Gypsy stated that she didn't want to have anything to do with him. She said that she would have respected it more if he had just admitted that he had done it so that they could kind of move on. She states that her reasons for speaking up now is in hopes that by talking about this, it might prevent him from hurting anybody else. Okay, that is pretty heavy stuff. However, a few questions come to light here as I am reflecting on this situation. And these questions are not coming from a place where I don't believe her or I'm taking sides or anything like that. They're just questions that any critical thinker would naturally or should have, but y'all tell me what y'all think about it in the comments. Okay. I just want to disclaim here, I myself have suffered sexual abuse as a child, so I'm not just coming from this situation like, okay. No, I don't like it when people use like the Me Too movement and things like that just to have some kind of platform to stand on and scream and shout that everybody's being a predator, when there's really people who go through this stuff and can't even ask for help, don't know where to go, don't know what to do to get themselves out of these situations, and they're not even believed when people ask them about it and they try to tell the truth. So it irks me when there are women or anybody out there who will try to use sexual abuse as a way to gain like sympathy from people or try to make people feel bad for them or take them more seriously when it didn't really happen. You understand what I'm saying? So that's why you will hear me questioning these kinds of allegations on behalf of the people who really have to go through this kind of stuff. Like, let's not make it so that it's difficult for more people to be heard. All right. So first I want to know if her concern was that her grandfather being exposed might help prevent this from happening to another kid. Why has she only ever mentioned this as she was about to be released from prison? Why have we never heard about these allegations in all of the years that she's been in the spotlight for her crime? As much as I sympathize with any child who has to go through something like that, what she's describing here, I just wonder why it was never factored in after psychiatric evaluations were done, therapy was conducted, all sorts of authorities were involved in her case. I don't even think her other family members have heard about this until it was made known public in this documentary. Now, this does not mean that Gypsy is necessarily lying, but it is possible she might be misremembering something that happened at a very young age, or perhaps regurgitating something that she heard somebody else, like her manipulative mother, for instance, talking about when she was young. Just for an example, this is really customary for people who practice parental alienation to do with their kids to turn them against the other parent. They'll sometimes say things like around the kid, they'll talk to other people and they'll be like, yeah, he's molesting my kid and I don't like the way he's looking at her, I don't like the way he's touching her, I don't like the way he's inappropriate. And if you keep hearing your parent talking like that over and over and over again, it may skew your views on that parent. So when you're around this parent and they're giving you hugs and kisses, which is a normal thing for your parent to do, maybe you interpret it kind of funny. Maybe you looking at them like, why is he hugging me so much? Why he always trying to kiss me? Why he always want me to sit on his lap? Maybe you would just look at it kind of iffy, right? Or sometimes the parent will tell the kid, that's inappropriate that your dad is doing this. That's inappropriate that your brother is doing that. If they keep telling the kid over and over again that something is inappropriate, even if it's not because of my own weird reasons, that could make that child confused and actually believe that this person is being predatory towards them when they really are not. So this kid grew up believing that the actions of the other parent were negligent, faulty, dangerous, and view the other parent as some kind of villain when in fact they haven't done anything wrong. It's very easy to manipulate the mind of a child, and we all know it has been documented that Deedee Blanchard was an extremely manipulative woman who did her worst on her child, Gypsy. So this is just one angle, but here's the other side of it. Could granddad have been up to no good? I mean, we know Deedee, his daughter, had a reputation for being mentally unstable from a really young age, even before she had a child. I'm still concerned as to why she felt it was necessary to date and have a kid with, let alone marry, Gypsy's father, Rod Blanchard, who at the time was only a teenager. Like, was he still in high school? Deedee was already an adult when she had this relationship, and lucky for her, Gypsy's father was simply a reasonable young man who did his best to be there for his kid. Men get a lot of flack in our society for pursuing teenage women and even women in their 20s if there's enough of an age gap to make people look at him sideways, but we tend to let it slide when the genders are reversed, and that makes no sense to me. Blame my autism racism, I don't always understand how society justifies its double standards. But whatever the case, could Granddad Claude be guilty of such actions? He's been interviewed in the past concerning his daughter's murder and asked about how she was when she was alive, and nobody would have guessed by his demeanor or any of their other family that he could be hiding such sinister secrets. I didn't expect him to say that Gypsy herself was being inappropriate with him when she was very young, but this is actually something that is not that uncommon in children who were being abused. They often will act out in sexually inappropriate ways due to anxieties or reenacting things that were done to them by a predator or things they saw happening in front of them between adults, and they may be too young to process what's going on or even to realize that it's inappropriate. Or Claude could be inadvertently telling on himself by trying to explain away why Gypsy may have memories of him touching her or the other way around. Like, who really knows? I've experienced my own narcissistic mom trying to accuse a family member of mine of being sexually attracted to me because he and I were really close and we spent a lot of time together alone. But coming from somebody who turned a blind eye when her actual boyfriend was molesting her children, I knew not to take her words to heart. But her harmful allegations really changed the dynamic of my relationship with my family member, and I could see how uncomfortable that he would be around me when I tried to show him any affection, as I usually do with all of my close loved ones and friends. I'm just a naturally affectionate person, and then here goes my mom making it weird for her own selfish reasons. But like I said, my mom is very manipulative herself, so this is not something that should really surprise you if you are dealing with people who have manipulation problems. Gypsy did mention that, quote, "I wasn't ready to open up about certain things in my life at that time, and now I am. And so I'm really sharing my whole truth," end quote. Again, she could just be talking about the stuff now because she has the confidence to talk about it now and she was uncomfortable talking about it before. But again, when I see red flags, I have to point them out. It concerns me that she's using this term, my truth, because what does that even mean? Like, people will say my truth as if that is the truth, but that doesn't necessarily mean it really happened. It could just be your perception of things. So there's really no way to know for sure what happened here, but I found this to be quite controversial and I don't know what will come of it. I guess we just gotta wait and see. Kim Kardashian tag team. This one really threw me for a loop. So I found the statement made by Gypsy regarding Kim Kardashian and working with her to change prison reform systems in the United States. It would be cool. She has that huge platform for prison reform, and I have been in prison. So having those two elements, I think we could do some good in the world. Goodness gracious, where do I even start with this one? Y'all, you might hear me saying this a whole lot in this episode. Okay, apparently Kim K fancies herself a lawyer. I guess being the household name for a stay-home thought is eating away at her soul or something. Now, into her 40s, Kim K wants to follow her biological father's footsteps and help prisoners who are wrongfully imprisoned or have harsh sentences for whatever crimes they were convicted of. And I am all for any type of reform. Yes, why waste that pretty face on OnlyFans where you'll just blend in with all the other Tatianas when you could use it to bring home a dad, a son, a mom, or a sister early from prison? I think that's commendable, all jokes aside. Now, before her release, Gypsy made a public post thanking Kim K for shouting out the documentary about her life, Mommy, Dead, and Dearest, which I do recommend you guys go and watch that if you haven't. I took a look at Kim's post, and actually, she listed quite a few documentaries for true crime junkies to check out. Hold up, is Kim K a true crime junkie like us? OMG, is she in the club? She's in the club. I just realized. Let me stop cracking on her. Y'all, don't get it twisted. I swear, I'm not just saying this because I realize that she's in our club, okay? I don't have a problem with Kim K. I think she is hilarious, accidentally. She just makes questionable choices when it comes to representing womanhood and relationships. And she's a public figure, so you're opening yourself up to criticism from the public. And ma'am, I happen to be a part of the public, that's all. Kim, I know you will never watch this, but I promise you, I swear, I'm not hating. Y'all heard me say she was pretty, right? Come on now, stop being dramatic, ladies, come on. So what is it that I'm getting at here? Gypsy Rose Blanchard, fresh out of prison, has her eyes on teaming up with none other than Kim Kardashian for some serious prison reform action. Okay, so far so good. They haven't had no sit-downs yet, but Gypsy is pretty hyped about learning from Kim's experience in the justice system and her impactful work on prison reform. Okay, so far so good. Now that Gypsy's out, she still sees Kim as a potential partner in her mission, and news outlets are spinning the story as though they might join forces if everything aligns. Gypsy believes that Kim's know-how can help her navigate the social media scene and boost her advocacy for prison reform. Okay. Even up to here, that seems reasonable. Despite the so-called shout out on social media, they have not directly connected yet, big surprise, but the internet is ever hopeful that the doors are wide open for a future collab. Well, here's where things go a little bit down a hill. There are some accusations flying around about Gypsy seeking attention through these means, but the people that are close to her swear up and down that her commitment to using her platform for prison reform is the real deal. Here I go with my skepticism. Not really, I'm just a critical thinker. On that list of documentaries that were recommended by Kim K, you will see shows like The Tiger King, The Jinx, and probably a handful of others where the story is not really favoring the people that are showcased. So that tells me, even if your case was mentioned on that list that she posted, it doesn't necessarily mean that Kim K thinks that you don't deserve to be in prison for your crime, or that she's supporting you in any sense of the word. None of those. Imagine Tiger King, aka Joe Exotic, telling the entire internet, based on that one post, that he would like to work with Kim K on prison reform, huh? Imagine him saying, "Thanks for the shout out, Kim. I'm looking forward to us collabing to change the world." Like, huh? Is that how he talks? I did watch the documentary, I can't remember, but I'm sure he got some kind of southern accent, right? That's a horrible southern accent. I don't think we should be taking things out of context, y'all. Just because I recommend a case does not mean that I'm siding with the accused. I could just think the details of the case are interesting or educational, and I want to put some other viewers on to that show. I like talking about the case. You know, they made a documentary about Casey Anthony not too long ago where she talks about her dad and how he was really the guilty party here and she was covering for him this entire whole time, blah 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 blah. The more she talks, the more guilty she sounds, the more obvious it is she is a pathological liar, and the more I sympathize with her family for having to endure the embarrassment of being associated with Basket Casey. And do I recommend that documentary to you, true crime lovers? Hell to the yeah. It's creepy watching somebody talk about lies like they really believe that they're true. It's very insightful to look into the human psyche, and if you're anything like me, abnormal psychology fascinates you, and this would be a great case study, so I do recommend. I don't think it's too smart on Gypsy's end to read too much into Kim K making a post that included a handful of documentaries about crimes, including Gypsy's. Like the way that it's been spun in the media, it's almost like Gypsy personally thinks that Kim Kardashian is sympathizing with her because she made that, but she's looking at it like it's a shout out for her specifically. You feel me? You see what I'm saying here? Do you guys get the connection I'm trying to make here? So my prediction is that Kim K will continue to not respond to Gypsy's public statements about wanting to work with her, unless of course she can find some type of monetary value in it, or it's gonna help to boost her social standing. But at the end of the day, I mean, Kim Kardashian at this stage, even being known as the Hoes R Us spokesperson, she's still very popular. A lot of people still like her. Her brands are selling like hotcakes. All of her business endeavors are a success regardless of what people personally might feel about her. You feel me? So does she really need to collab with Gypsy Rose in order to make something happen? I don't know. I'm just saying, if it was me, if I was Kim K, I would just be like, oh, that's cute. That's cute that she thinks that I'm shouting her out. Next, trigger warning. Okay, so this is another concern that I think a lot of people are wondering about, because we all know what Gypsy did when she felt cornered by her mother, right? But now that she's an adult and she's free, it's like, has that tendency changed? I did hear her say on The View that she handled it the wrong way, that she does take responsibility for what she did and the part that she played in the whole thing. However, since that time, we've had more people who have had interactions with Gypsy in and out of prison that have come forward and given their takes on how they view Gypsy. For example, on the Good Wives Network over on YouTube, you'll hear an interview with a prison worker who was there with Gypsy while she was incarcerated, and she talks about how, in her opinion, it seemed as if Gypsy was very manipulative. That being said, I think I've mentioned in my initial video where I talked about Gypsy's case that I also noticed a lot of manipulative tactics on her part when she was being questioned by the police officers. And if you just don't know to pick up those signs, it can very easily be looked at like it's all innocent. You know, it's just a misunderstanding. It's not on purpose. But when people are being manipulative, they know what they're doing. They know that they're changing the way that they're presenting themselves in order to get the other person to do what they want them to do, to cooperate with them in some way. I'm not saying this is bad necessarily. Sometimes you do have to be manipulative to survive in certain situations. Like, you know, you ever hear those stories about people who get abducted and then they pretend that they're in love with their abductors and get them to trust them so that they can put their guard down and then find an escape? And that has worked for many a people. In a situation like that, absolutely you should be as manipulative as you need to be to live, right? But, you know, when your life is not in danger and it's not a situation where your survival is at stake, this could cause a problem in your relationships with people when they see you as someone who's deceptive or manipulative. The prison worker talks about how in the beginning, even though she wasn't supposed to, for a long time, Gypsy had been trying to sneak communications with Nick Godejohn over the years, and yet towards the end of her prison sentence, when she realized that it was not going to be in her best interest to be communicating with Nick, she said she just stopped trying to communicate with him altogether. But because initially she wasn't supposed to be talking to him, the worker was saying that she noticed a lot of manipulative behaviors that she would engage in order to get people to pass notes for her to Nick. So that's maybe a red flag. The worker also stated that Gypsy didn't like her specifically. I guess maybe because she wasn't playing into these little tactics that Gypsy might use to try to get her to do her favors or something, or be lenient with her. She says that Gypsy tried to get her moved to a different pod by lying to the authorities and saying that she and Gypsy knew each other outside of the prison system, which would have been a conflict of interest, which means that they would have to remove the worker to a different portion of the jail where they're not going to bump into each other. This is all alleged. I don't know if there's any proof of this, but I mean, I don't know what this person would have to gain from talking about something like this. If anything, I'd be scared I would lose my job, you know? Honestly, it's really not out of the ordinary at all for people who grew up in these highly abusive situations or with very narcissistic parents to learn how to be manipulative in order to navigate their social relationships, especially someone with Gypsy's background. I don't think that we're being over the top here to say that she's probably lacking in normal social skills and social norms that would help her to navigate relationships with people outside of a prison system. Because y'all, if you don't know anything about prison, I'm telling you, prison culture is completely different than how things are in real life, okay? The closest thing you're gonna get to prison culture in real life, go to the hood. Like, seriously, if you've ever grown up in the hood, lived in the hood, had any experiences dealing with people from the hood, you can see what I'm talking about here. There's a lot of prison rules that get applied, like no snitching in the hood, and it's just normalized over there, you know? Having to be dominant, having to make sure that people don't think you're soft and always carrying yourself like you're a tough guy. Even the women, it's very normal in that type of an environment where, sadly, the people are living in a situation where they're just constantly in survival mode. You feel me? So that, I feel like, is the only place where having these kinds of tendencies would really work to your benefit. Tell you now, that's not a normal way for people to engage in relationships with each other. I would not be surprised if, having went from her mother's abusive household full of lies and acting and manipulation into this space where now she has more freedom, personal freedom, but she's still enclosed inside of a prison system. I can see how these dynamics may have shifted the way that she thinks that relationships work with people. But in Gypsy's ebook, she states that her faith in God is what she ultimately will be relying on as she leaves the prison system when she's facing tough times. You know, what happens the next time she feels threatened in some way, like she did with her mother. It kind of scares me a little bit, concerns me a little bit of like, what level of trappedness would Gypsy feel like she needed to be at? You know, how far against the wall does her back need to be pushed up against it before she comes to the realization one day, oh, I might have to off this person because I don't know how to get out of this situation again. I don't know. In a time of desperation, I don't know if that would play a role in how someone makes their decisions. I've heard stories about people who had situations where they were defending themselves against somebody very abusive. They were allowed to kind of get away with it because it was considered a justifiable homicide. Then some years later, this same person who as a child may have committed a crime like this, they get away with it. When they get older and they're in a similar position, they react the exact same way and they just get away with it, or they think they're gonna get away with it because they did the first time. I've heard numerous stories like this, so I don't want this story to turn into one of those, but it's a concern that I would have as someone interacting with Gypsy, like, stay on her good side. You feel me? Fame and riches. Alright, so in her ebook, she also mentions about how her mom had always wanted to be famous. That may play some part in how this Munchausen by proxy really took over her mother's mental state, where she was sacrificing her own kids' health so that she could be a well-known figure in her community. She talks about how her mom had dreams of marrying somebody famous, And after the act was made, Gypsy became even more famous while she was in prison. Well, I shouldn't even say even more, because I don't think Gypsy Rose knew how known her name was within the true crime circuits. I feel like even before the act came out, people had already known about her case within our niche, right? But outside of that, I guess when the act came out, that's when like just regular Joes were like, oh, what is this? So she talked about how like people would walk up to her in the prison and ask for her autograph and be wanting to be friends with her because they knew who she was. And actually, Gypsy had been previously married while she was in prison, so let's just talk about that real quick. This guy named Ken was one of her pen pals. They were dating, and then obviously they got married, but then what happened was the act came out and her name was everywhere. And then the guy got cold feet and he just was like, nah, I don't want to have nothing to do with this. Not because he didn't know about her case, obviously, but because he didn't want that kind of limelight in his life that the act was bringing out to the forefront. Some people are looking at this like it could be a red flag for him, because they're like, what did he have to hide? Why he didn't want people to know who he was? Why he was scared? And I get it, but I mean, look at what's going on with her husband now, Ryan. He's under so much scrutiny for no reason other than the fact that he's married to her. People don't barely know anything about him, but there's so much negative commentary going on about him. I've heard people, I'm gonna get to that part. But anywho's in, Gypsy's first husband actually ended up breaking up with her because he just didn't want to be bothered with all of the nonsense. So she talked about how that was like a heartbreaking situation for her. It was like her first official heartbreak. Now in the Lifetime docuseries, Gypsy talks about her life and wanting to be an advocate, but that she's very aware that people are going to criticize her as a hypocrite for wanting to have a private life while also being in the limelight. And I can see where she's coming from with that. It is something that I think people are kind of looking at her sideways about. But she says that she sees her platform as a podium where her self-worth and identity can be showcased. Again, I know where you're coming from, boo, but this could be very dangerous for Gypsy, as isn't this what got her into the situation that she went through with her mom? Her mom being so obsessed with acting her way through life and pretending to be something she's not in exchange for attention and free perks really messed a lot of things up. I think that Gypsy would honestly benefit from taking like a year or two away from the spotlight and just focusing on her own mental health, acclimating to real life and virtual life as we know it. I've been free all my life, y'all, and I still can barely keep up with the comments on all of my social media accounts, even from my own family and people that I know in real life. Like, don't even get me started with the strangers who write me daily. I know y'all like, what strangers, Gypsy? You have like 10 subscribers over here, girl. Stop playing yourself. I know, but guys, listen, this is not my only YouTube channel. I started on Broken Dolly TV. Shout out to my viewers from over there who are visiting me here. I have over 14,000 subscribers over there. My husband has a huge platform as well, where I cameo when he wants me to chime in on something. And I get a lot of comments and questions from people. I often have to delegate to my husband, who is more socially aware than I am. He has a better patience threshold with people than I do. So that's the only way I can keep on top of my engagement, you feel me? I don't even know how AdSense works. He takes care of all of that behind the scenes boring stuff, all right? I'm just good at talking. That's what I do. Gypsy Rose, babe, I'm just saying, it's okay to slow down. I know losing 8 years of your young adulthood and almost your entire childhood can mess with your head, but it's totally okay. As Corey Kenshin famously stated, I'm gonna pass these words on to you, girl. Social media is dangerous. Y'all listen, I know I joke a lot about having ADHD, but I really do have ADHD. And the way it works alongside my autistic trait of hyper-focusing on my interests, it's definitely confusing trying to get my mind to cooperate with itself. I have so much more to cover on this update for you guys, but my brain is freezing up on me and I really need to reboot it before I turn into a pumpkin. So we're gonna call this part 1, and I will have a part 2 ready for y'all very shortly. So thank you so much for being patient and bearing with me. I really have a great time over here sharing these dark stories with all of you guys. In addition to my true crime series, I'm also working on a series entitled Tragic Turns, which is not based specifically on crimes, but just general misfortunes that befall people based on mental illness issues, abuse, being at the wrong place at the wrong time, or just not being aware of things that they could have prevented from happening. I'm always into those kind of stories where people might consider it a bit depressing or sad, but listen, I know that we can always learn something from other people's mistakes and prevent hardships from our own lives with knowledge. Remember back in the day they used to tell us knowledge is power? That never stops being true. And if we don't talk about these things, how are we ever going to learn? So I'm trying to do my part to take all of the mystery out of these topics and normalize discussions that could help us to save ourselves from heartache. If that's something that interests you, I have put up some links at the end of this video right up on the screen. You just gotta click on it to check out the episodes in that series. This channel is still in its infancy, and I pray that you guys will take a chance on me and help me grow my little baby into a beautiful swan as I bring more stories for your consumption. If you like my style, let me know in the comments if there's any future cases you want me to look into. I appreciate all 3 of you who stuck around till the end. I will see you in part 2 very soon. My name is Gypsy with an IE, and stay safe, folks. Ciao!